what differentiates addiction from just a dependency is it's coupled with a physical compulsion. So although I can't stop thinking about doing what I know I don't really want to be doing, glug, 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 I can't stop thinking about not drinking, so the voice gets louder and louder in my head, and I can't stop thinking about not drinking, even though I don't want to be drinking. I can't stop thinking about not doing what I don't want to be doing, till sooner or later, in order to break the pattern in my head, I think, damn it, let's just go and have a drink. That'll quiet the voice. Obsession and compulsion. And the result of this, over time, is the spiritual malady, that I have become spiritually unwell.
Welcome to this new episode, and today I am with Ian from England. Hi Ian.
Hi, I'm Ian from England, that's me.
How are you?
I'm good. I've got a bit of a stiff neck, so I might have trouble turning, but other than that, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Ian is an addiction consultant.
That's true.
So today we're going to talk about addiction and how you are taking care of people that are struggling with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sober myself for over 20 years and working professionally in the industry of addiction treatment since 2003 or so. So 18 years or so that I've been a professional. I've undergone a lot of therapeutic and coaching training myself, and I also am a trainer of certified courses. I was the first guy that was certifying people outside of North America as recovery coaches and also as interventionists. And primarily I've built like 4 rehabs over my time. But these days, since 2008, my primary thing has been my company Sober Services, which is interventions going into families and helping manifest change in people that don't want to change, and recovery coaches / sober companions, which is going in and working kind of one-on-one with someone intensely in either at their house or in a space that's not a treatment center, but I take the treatment to them.
Wow, okay, Sober Services, yes. And I know a little bit about your personal history. You just mentioned it now. Would you like to go a little bit more in details? I mean, if you feel like sharing, how did you get into drugs in the first place? And how then you moved into being sober and setting up your services?
I got into drugs because they made me feel good. And I realized that when I took drugs, I felt good about myself. And I think as a young teenager, I was a kind of teeny goth, and then I realised that hippies did lots of drugs, so I became a hippie, and then I realised that punks did more drugs than hippies, so I became a punk, and then I realised that ravers did loads of drugs, so I became a raver. And I was actually in that first cusp of being a raver around 1990. So slightly after the Balearic guys had come back from Ibiza, but I was in that rave scene as it emerged in the UK. And I was involved with a group called Spiral Tribe initially, and then later Bedlam Sound Systems, putting on huge illegal rave parties in the UK. I used to squat big venues or pieces of land, and we'd bring 5,000 people in for a party that weekend. And then I managed to get myself arrested enough times that I figured it was now more appropriate for me to self-exile from the UK rather than, I didn't fancy going to prison. So I went on the run, and obviously if you're going to leave the UK on the run, and in those days I didn't have a passport, so I got myself smuggled into Holland. It seemed like the natural first place to go to was Amsterdam, because the weather's the same as the UK, but you could smoke ganja everywhere. And from there I made a whole new network, and I kind of began trafficking and smuggling drugs east and west, north and south across Europe. And simultaneously became a DJ because I was passionate about music. So passionate about music, passionate about drugs, be a superstar DJ who sells drugs. That's kind of what happened. And then throughout the 90s, I would be playing all over mainland Europe, particularly Western. I was based in France, in the south of France, but I'd go into Spain and Italy and Holland and Germany, Austria, right out to Czechoslovakia, putting on these big parties, these big technivals. Sometime around 1999, I was now more wanted in Europe than I was in the UK, so I had to get myself smuggled back to London. And I came back to London. See, I'd had 13 years of chronic addiction and alcoholism every day. That's all I did. I was dedicated to getting high every day. And I kind of think that the first kind of 6-7 years was psychedelic and hallucinogenic. I was deeply immersed in acid house and ecstasy culture. And the second sort of 7 years was more about my descent into cocaine and heroin and smoking crack and I used to inject cocaine and snort heroin, which is kind of the unusual way around, but that's kind of how I like to. And I came back to the UK in '99 with a big dependency on opiates and cocaine, but with no longer the means to support myself. And that's where I kind of went into that junkie archetype, and I started having to do the things I didn't want to do in order to get the things that I felt I needed to get. Stealing, hurting people. I became a nasty version of myself. And coming out of that place and having that realization that I couldn't live with myself anymore, there was only one solution. It's either to take more drugs in order to escape the dreadful feelings of feeling so self-loathing, or ultimately it was the path of, well, I need to check out permanently. And a whole load of things went down. I consider them like God moments where I was kind of guided through this process, but I found myself at the beginning of 2001, January 2001, ultimately doing another cold turkey detox by myself, shitting, shivering and shaking, and I found myself being introduced into a residential rehab and then into a 12-step program, and I was explained that abstinence was how I needed to move forward with my life. Abstinence from all drugs, not just the ones that I thought was a problem, cocaine, heroin, alcohol, but I actually needed to get abstinent from everything, and that included ganja, the ones that I grew out of the ground or that grow naturally. That included the nice pills that the doctor would prescribe me, Valium. I used to love Valiums. That included the legal ones like drugs, and then ultimately the legal highs as they emerged, like GHB and things like that. I was told that I needed to be abstinent from all things that affect me from the neck up, mood-altering or mind-altering substances, and replace my thirst for drugs with a thirst for spirituality, and to go on a course and on a direction of, well, self-exploration, internal personal development, transformation, and what does spirituality mean for me? And that's been my pursuit for the last 20 years, expanding myself spiritually.
That's a beautiful story you're telling me. I mean, because you've been in drugs for so long, and you said you had various cold turkey detox that you did yourself. Why the last one was actually effective? I mean, do you remember there any switch or anything happening in you? You said, okay, this is for real. This is the last time this is going to happen. Yeah. Because, I mean, it did happen eventually.
Sure. The 12-step program it was written in the 1930s for alcoholics, and it's got 85 plus years of proven history, and it's difficult for people to swallow, because it's saying actually you need to start from a place of abstinence, and then you need to internalize and look at yourself and consider how your addiction has taken you on this journey of self-destruction, and see how much of a, well, in my case, how much of a bastard I'd become, and look at that and ask myself, do I want to still be a bad boy, or do I want to be a good guy? And I made a decision in that process that I was fed up with being that bad boy, and that it was time for me to be a good guy. And I dedicated myself to being a good guy. And I say how, it's a spiritual program. It's not a religious one, but there's a big spiritual element to it. And part of the 12-step program is about understanding what spirituality is for you or for me. And the most best thing I can say about spirituality was when I was exploring the Dalai Lama from Tibetan Buddhism. And he said, a spiritual life is one being of service to others.
Okay.
And that blew my mind, because that's as simple as spirituality needs to be. If there is, and this is my hashtag bubblegum spirituality. If you go onto Facebook and look at hashtag bubblegum spirituality, this is what I use. Bubblegum spirituality is the simplest way that we can turn the world into being a better place by following simple spiritual principles. Number one, very famous, do unto others as you'd like done to yourself. Really big Christian dogma, that, nothing wrong with that. Do unto others as you'd like done to yourself. That's bubblegum spirituality. And number two, do for others what they cannot do for themselves. And those are the two rules of spirituality that I've adopted for myself. So I see how I can bring a better quality of life to other people. And in doing so, whilst I'm spending my time helping you smile, God as I understand God, which is a whole different conversation, helps me feel better about myself.
Sure.
and it makes me feel good enough about myself and who I am and what I get to be, that I don't need to think about using cocaine anymore. I don't need to think about using heroin anymore. I don't need to be getting drunk anymore, because I'm having too much of a good time hanging out with people, helping people, and seeing how we can just be a better human being on this planet.
Indeed, it's possibly one of the most meaningful things you can do is to help others and be a service to others. Indeed, and when people start relying on you in a certain way or take your advice, you become a role model to them. Then it's a lot of responsibility, and but also is a way for you to say, okay, I have a role in life. I can do something which is of good. And I mean, I found spirituality meaningfully about maybe 6-7 years ago. And for me, it's been also a turnaround. I mean, I was not a drug abuser, but I was very stressed. I was having my life was not as good as it is now, for sure, thanks to spirituality. And the life change that it brings about, because once you embrace spirituality, everything looks and feels a little bit different, right? And then you go into a virtuous cycle, and then it's easier maybe to improve your diet or to improve a certain relationship with people, to move to Thailand and live in this beautiful country. Tell us a little bit about your rehab center. The Phuket one is the main one at the moment, is that right?
So I built 2 in the UK, one of which was successful, and the second one which was very successful. Then I was literally burnt out from doing this. I was so committed to it, so immersed in it. In 2011, I sold my part in that, but in 2008, I'd started my private practice to work alongside that of interventions and sober companions and recovery coaches, lived my life. I was married for 11 years, very happily married, and I've had a very happy separation from my wife as well. I'm still very fond of her. But when I came out of that marriage, I had been coming out and visiting rehabs over here, doing independent consultancy with some rehabs in Chiang Mai in particular, also in Koh Phangan. And I'd seen an opportunity for me to spread sober services, gather together with someone that has been a dear friend of mine since 2004 when he got sober, who was the best man at my wedding, and who we had just done a lot of service together around the world for our fellowship, which is Cocaine Anonymous. That's Cocaine Anonymous. So Russell and I, he was living next door to me in Chiang Mai. We said, okay, let's go. We went down to Phuket and pulled everything that we had left, everything, into building the Phuket Addiction Recovery Clinic, the PARC. That opened in August 2019. And then, of course, in January, February, we're hearing about this virus going off in 2020. And we were 6 months open, and we were full, and suddenly Thailand's borders are closed. I started traveling around Thailand trying to find people that wanted help. I went up to Pattaya, I went to Bangkok, I went up to Chiang Mai, and in Chiang Mai I had a relationship with a guy who said, oh, come to Koh Phangan, I've got a friend with a resort there and they want to build a sober community there. And actually they didn't want to build a sober community there, but the guy in Chiang Mai thought it would be a good idea, so he sold me into the idea. So I came back to Koh Phangan and suddenly I saw what was going on. The resort is in Ha Jiao, and it's called Shirali. And I saw what was going on along the west coast, and I was suddenly excited and blown away by my experience of Thailand at this time. Last August was everything was closed. Everything was closed down. Bangkok was a dead city. Yeah, sure. Phuket was empty. Samui was crazy dead. And suddenly on Koh Phangan, everything's alive. There was a real community spirit, and loads of activities were going on. I got straight into ecstatic dancing. I immersed myself in the 12-step fellowship here. I got involved with a whole crowd of new friends through the Hemingways. I'm good friends with the Hemingways crowd. And I just kind of immersed myself in Koh Phangan life and moved here formally.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what kind of methodology you use with drug abusers?
Professionally or
professionally?
Well, because the 12-step is not a professional tool. It's an amateur. It's free. The 12-step program, we have 12-step meetings on the island, and then within the group of the 12-step framework, people will then take someone aside and take them through the 12-step process. The 12-step process is also what we use at our facility, but at that point, the facility is also, we're doing medically managed detoxes, and we're doing a lot more than just the 12-step program. It's a whole holistic think mind, body and spirit program. When we're healing someone from their addiction, it's not just about their physical dependency. It can't be. If it was as simple as that, I would only have needed to do one detox, one cold turkey cluck. But yeah, I did them for years. For 3 years, I couldn't figure it out. It's because addiction centers in the mind. It's not a physical thing. The physical part of my addiction is the result of my obsession, my mental obsession around a substance or a person or a behavior or a process or whatever it is, gambling or shopping. So whatever it is. So it starts in the mind, okay? Yeah. But what differentiates addiction from just a dependency is it's coupled with a physical compulsion. Okay. So although I can't stop thinking about doing what I know I don't really want to be doing, glug, 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 I can't stop thinking about not drinking, so the voice gets louder and louder in my head, and I can't stop thinking about not drinking, even though I don't want to be drinking. I can't stop thinking about not doing what I don't want to be doing, till sooner or later, in order to break the pattern in my head, I think, damn it, let's just go and have a drink. That will quiet the voice. I have one drink, and then the phenomenon of craving, the physical compulsion is triggered. And once I start, I can't stop. Once I start doing cocaine, I can't stop. Once I start dropping E's, I can't stop. Once I start going out and doing gambling, I can't stop myself from continuing. So I have a twofold problem. It starts in my mind, and it's a dialogue in my head that I cannot shut down the voices until I think, damn it, let's just give in to the voices in order to quieten them. And then the second part is, once I start, I can't stop. So I have lost the power to choose. I can't choose not to. And I've lost the power of control. I can't stop myself once I've started.
Strong compulsion, basically, yeah.
Obsession and compulsion. Mm-hmm. And the result of this, over time, is the spiritual malady, that I have become spiritually unwell.
What are the steps? What do you do with them?
I mean, every client is going to be different, and not every client is going to need a physical detox. That's just the kind of box-ticking medical side to most or some clinics. Mm-hmm. Typically, alcoholics, benzodiazepine dependent, and often heroin users. To go through a heroin withdrawal will not kill you. It will be uncomfortable, but it won't kill you. So we make people comfortable for that. To go through an alcohol detox is dangerous. There are 1 in 10 unsupervised alcohol detoxes result in death because of choking on your vomit, having delirium seizures that are so profound that that you shake yourself into fatalities. But the hardest detoxes I ever see are benzodiazepines, Valiums, Xanax, sleeping pills, where people cannot sleep once we start taking them off. So we'll taper them down, and then they'll go loopy with sleeplessness, sleep deprivation. And the detox, the physical detox from a dependency to benzos takes 4 to 6 months. The mind, it's so tough for it to readjust to sleeping without the use of pharmacological support. That's the hardest one to witness. Once someone's been through the detox, then we get them to understand their addictive disease, how once they think about it, the mental obsession, the physical compulsion, and the spiritual unrest, spiritual malady as a result of these two parts. And for most people, that's the first time they would have heard such an idea. Because as an addict, the last thing I want to hear is that I have to get abstinent. I want to hear, I should be able to control it. I can drink sensibly. I can use cocaine like a gentleman. I should be able to use heroin at weekends only. There's no reason why I can't go out and party at the weekends with all my friends. They do it safely, so why can't I? The last thing you want to hear is actually you have a mental obsession, which means that whenever you start with just a joint, it's going to lead you back to just have anything that affects me, my mood or my mind, and I'm instantly thinking about, well, it's party time. I need to have more. I need to have this to make myself feel like this. The neuro pathways are laced with memories which remind me of the first time that I took it and how great I felt. And I cannot stop thinking about how great I felt that one time 18 years ago, and therefore I'm going to replicate that this time perfectly, and yet failing time and time again. Which is why every day I get up and I try and chase that high again.
Yeah, because dopamine is one of these neurotransmitters extremely, once you start triggering in unnatural ways, then to get a natural high is very, very hard, Even if somebody comes and gives you a hug, it's not as strong, or even if I don't know, if I go kite surfing, for instance, that would be a great way for me to get a good dose of dopamine, right? But
Sure.
if you have a line of cocaine, that's like 10 times more.
Yeah, it's the easier,
And-
softer option.
Yeah, and then going back to natural ways of feeling good and feeling excited, that must be very hard.
And that's why exercise is so relevant to people, because we start moving our bodies, we change our emotion, and once, just by movement, just by motion, we change our emotion. Exercise is a really good way to change people's feelings. Remember, I ultimately what I want to do is I want to artificially change how I feel. I wake up on any given day and I want to feel better than how I feel. And so I've self-taught myself that using drugs makes me feel better than I need to feel, or than I am feeling. And I've taught myself that drugs work. And that's why I keep doing it. So if I can start teaching myself that exercise works, or yoga, a lot of people in recovery get into yoga. You need to find, or I needed to find a mission and a reason why I was going to stay sober. I needed a higher purpose than just not getting high. And part of that was my work and getting involved with helping people professionally and also spiritually. And other things, that music and comedy were massive for me, which is making myself laugh. Watching comedy shows just really made me feel great. Music had always been a passion of mine. Coming back to this island, 20 years sober and discovering ecstatic dancing, which is where I met you, has been a mood-altering experience that has radically exploded me internally and creatively and spiritually, to the point that I was a DJ in the 90s. I would regularly play sets to 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people. I'm not scared of crowds. But yet, when I got sober, I stopped playing professionally. I would play for friends, for charity, or for invite-only things. But I stopped playing professionally altogether. And here I am now, back here 20 years later, and I've begun DJing again. I've started dancing after 20 years. I've started playing music again, and these are reasons for me to stay sober. These aren't reasons for me to go to the party and get high. These are reasons for me to go to the party and find a new way of enjoying it. My personal mission in life is to co-create a green and harmonious world through laughter and love. I wrote a book in 2010, 2011, so 9 years ago or something. And so I wrote ian-young.com as a site to help my book sales. The book is called It's Not About Me. It's actually all about me. It's an autobiography of my descent into drugs and addiction and then into recovery. And it's actually all about the recovery process as well. It's about the spiritual journey that I came to understand when my head popped out of my arse and I realized the world doesn't revolve around me. And what I'm trying to do are really keeping it simple. 6 services of, first of all, assessment. Let me talk to you, let me talk to your friend or whoever it is that's challenged, and assess the situation. And number 2, referral. So either I'll recommend a treatment center or a therapist or someone that can help you. I'll refer you to the right place or person. Intervention if needed. If it's someone that's in denial or doesn't want to accept the consequences of what's going on for them, then I'll try and find a way to intervene, generally through a process using tough love. Recovery coaching, you might want to work one-on-one with me, in which case I've written a whole sober coaching workbook and program that I take people through over a period of weeks, months. So recovery coaching or bespoke one-on-one intensive sober companion stuff. So similar services to what I've been doing around the world for my other global company, which is sober-services.com. But just trying to do something more localized and maybe more priced more appropriately for the people on this island.
Well, I think what you're doing here is very, very useful and very nice. So thank you very much for sharing your experience of drug addiction and recovery, and also for enlightening us on the different opportunities that you're providing people with now.
Sure.
If they want to be helped, certainly you can be a vehicle for that. So, well, Ian, thank you very much for your little chat today.
Thank you.
Yes.